Back in 1940, the United States Navy commissioned the most formidable battleships it had ever conceptualized. 6 massive vessels, larger than any predecessor, fast enough to escort aircraft carriers, and equipped with 9 16-inch guns capable of decimating targets miles inland. These became the legendary Iowa class. 6 were ordered, yet only 4 ever set sail. Those 4 vessels saw action in every major American war from World War II all the way to the 1991 Gulf War. Together, they bombarded Japanese island fortresses across the Pacific, North Korean supply routes, Vietnamese jungle targets, and Iraqi military positions in the Kuwaiti desert. One of them formally ended the Second World War. Another was almost sunk by its own escort ship while transporting the American president. One is the most decorated battleship in U.S. Navy history, yet it remains relatively unknown. And one sailed into the Gulf War carrying the bow of a phantom ship that never truly existed. By the end of this video, you will discover exactly where all 4 rest today and the fate of the 2 that never made it. But to understand where they are now, you first need to know what they went through. Before diving deeper, Vanished Fleet is growing fast, and I genuinely want to express my gratitude to everyone watching. Where are you tuning in from? Do you have a personal connection to the Iowa-class battleships? Maybe a family member served on one, or you visited the museums? Let us know in the comments. Remember, 6 Iowa-class battleships were ordered, but only 4 were completed and commissioned. If you already knew that, great. If not, stick around because the fate of the other 2 is worth knowing. Let's begin with the famous USS Missouri. On September 2nd, 1945, in Tokyo Bay, a table was brought onto her deck. It was a bit too small for the historic event about to take place, so a larger mess table covered with a green cloth was quickly found. Japanese officials in formal attire and Allied representatives lined the deck. General Douglas MacArthur took the microphone. The Pacific War had already been decided, the atomic bombs had dropped, and Japan had announced its surrender weeks prior. However, the surrender needed to be made official, and a ship had to be chosen. They chose the Missouri. MacArthur spoke briefly. The Japanese foreign minister signed first, followed by the military representative and the Allied commanders. MacArthur purposefully used multiple pens, giving them away as souvenirs. In just 23 minutes, the deadliest conflict in human history formally ended. The Missouri later fought in Korea and was modernized in the 1980s with Tomahawk cruise missiles. In January 1991, she opened fire in the Gulf War, launching Tomahawks deep into Iraq and using her guns to support Marine forces along the Kuwaiti coast. She fired her guns in combat for the last time in February 1991 and was decommissioned in 1992. Then came the debate of her final resting place. Donated to a memorial association in Honolulu in 1998, the plan was to bring her to Pearl Harbor. The National Park Service, managing the USS Arizona Memorial, had concerns. The Arizona is a war grave visited by nearly 2 million people yearly in quiet reflection. Mooring an 887-foot battleship nearby might turn the site into a spectacle rather than a place of remembrance. A compromise was struck. Missouri would be positioned well back from the memorial, ensuring visitors on her deck wouldn't have a direct sight line to the Arizona during ceremonies. However, her bow was deliberately pointed directly at the Arizona, watching over it. The Arizona sank on the morning of December 7th, 1941, before the war properly began. The Missouri arrived years later and ended everything. Now they sit 400 yards apart, the ship that started the war and the ship that finished it. Next is the USS Iowa, commissioned in February 1943. Shortly after, she was handed a top-secret mission to transport President Franklin D. Roosevelt across the Atlantic to Tehran for a conference with Churchill and Stalin. A special bathtub was installed in the captain's quarters for the president, who used a wheelchair. On November 12, 1943, the Iowa departed. 3 days in, a catastrophic accident nearly altered the course of the war. The escorting destroyer, USS William D. Porter, was running a drill when a crew member accidentally launched a live, armed torpedo directly at the Iowa. The porter broke radio silence to warn the battleship. The Iowa turned hard, and the torpedo detonated harmlessly in her wake. Roosevelt reportedly asked to be wheeled onto the deck to watch the explosion. The porter's crew faced severe consequences, and the ship became notorious before eventually sinking off Okinawa after a kamikaze attack in 1945. The Iowa survived World War II, Korea, and decades of mothballs and reactivations. But on April 19, 1989, an explosion inside Turret 2 during a live-fire drill off the U.S. coast killed 47 sailors. The devastating incident was initially blamed on a crew member deliberately causing the blast, a finding later retracted, but forever scarring the victims' families. The exact cause was never definitively established. Decommissioned in 1990, the Iowa is now a museum ship in San Pedro, Los Angeles. Visitors can walk her decks and see Roosevelt's bathtub, but most walk past her too unaware of the tragedy that unfolded inside. Here is a fact almost nobody knows. The most decorated battleship in U.S. Navy history isn't the ship that ended World War II, nor the one that carried a president. It's the USS New Jersey. With 19 battle stars, she served in 4 separate wars and was reactivated and decommissioned 4 times. She served in World War II, and in Korea, she fired more shells than any battleship since World War II ended. In 1968, she was pulled out of mothballs for Vietnam, the only battleship to serve in that war. In just under a year, she fired over 5,000 rounds at targets smaller vessels couldn't reach. Decommissioned quietly in 1969, she was reactivated again in the 1980s for Lebanon, where she silenced Syrian artillery in the mountains above Beirut. She's the only American battleship to see active combat in 4 separate decades: the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 80s. Now a museum ship in Camden, New Jersey, she sits quietly on the Delaware River, her unmatched record mostly unnoticed by people driving past. Finally, there's the last one, the USS Wisconsin. She holds a unique distinction. She is the last battleship the U.S. Navy ever decommissioned, marking the end of the battleship era in 1991. But in 1956, she collided with the destroyer USS Eaton in heavy fog, shearing off roughly 70 feet of her bow. Instead of a lengthy repair from scratch, the Navy took the bow of the unfinished USS Kentucky, one of the 2 canceled Iowa-class ships, and welded it onto the Wisconsin in just 16 days. The Wisconsin that fired Tomahawk missiles in the Gulf War 4 decades later was carrying the nose of a ship that never sailed. During the Gulf War in 1991, the Wisconsin also achieved a historical first, using drones to spot her 16-inch gunfire against Iraqi positions on Falaka Island. A group of Iraqi soldiers saw the approaching drone and did something unprecedented. They surrendered to it, waving white flags at a machine. It was the first time in recorded military history that troops attempted to surrender to an unmanned vehicle. She is now a museum in Norfolk, Virginia, and if you look closely at her bow, you can see where the Kentucky ends and the Wisconsin begins. 6 Iowa-class battleships were ordered. The USS Illinois and USS Kentucky were never finished. The Illinois was broken up before she ever left the shipyard. The Kentucky sat in the yard for years until giving her bow to the Wisconsin, and the rest was scrapped in 1958. She never fired a gun, but part of her went to the Persian Gulf. 4 Iowa-class battleships made it to sea, and all 4 are still here. No other nation kept its massive battleships on this scale. Missouri watches over Pearl Harbor, Iowa rests in LA, New Jersey sits in Camden, and Wisconsin remains in Norfolk. All 4 of them are still out there,